During the Napoleonic Wars, one of the major fronts between France and the coalition was the aptly titled Peninsular War in the Iberian Peninsula, located in Spain and Portugal. Although initially triumphant, the French forces in Iberia would rapidly deteriorate in quality, lose their grip, and would ultimately have their army shattered by the hands of Wellington's allied army at Vittoria in 1813. With nowhere else to turn, some French soldiers fled to the nearby cities of San Sebastian and Pamplona, both of which fell under siege. Specifically, San Sebastian's siege would last over a month as the leader of the French garrison there, General Emmanuel Rey, would lead a tenacious defense against the Anglo-Portuguese 5th Division under Lieutenant General Leith. Meanwhile, Spanish troops were redirected to siege the French garrison at Pamplona. If both sieges could be completed, it would open a path to an invasion of France's southern border. In the first siege of San Sebastian, both sides sustained numerous casualties, and remaining Anglo-Portuguese soldiers would be captured and incarcerated in the Monte Castle atop Urgel Hill. Presumably among these soldiers was Robert Smith, a British soldier who had claimed to have been shot in the foot, hence leading to his capture. Years later, Britannia Herald would publish his testimony pertaining to the events at San Sebastian. Following the disastrous siege, Field Marshal Arthur Wellesley, the Marquis of Wellington, would try his hand at managing the siege, but before he could do so, he would be forced to divert attention to Marshal Soult and his army along the Pyrenees. In his place, he appointed Lieutenant General Thomas Graham to conduct the remainder of the second siege. During this second siege, on August 31st, British artillery batteries would manage to successfully breach the ramparts, and soon, hundreds of Anglo-Portuguese soldiers flowed into the city. Quickly, they were able to overwhelm the French in the city and force them to retreat to the Monte Castle, but not before inflicting devastating casualties on the Allied forces. Further up the coastline, Marshal Soult's forces would be halted in their attempts to relieve San Sebastian by Spanish forces under Captain General Frere at San Marcial, further sealing the fate of the French garrison as they slowly began to lose hope. Dire losses endured in both sieges would lead the Allied soldiers to inebriate themselves off of plundered wine, which then led to them going on a murderous rampage, sacking civilians in their homes before later burning them. During this, the blight would materialize within the city and ravage through intoxicated soldiers and remaining civilians. By the time the actual map takes place, most of the city would lay in ruins and most inhabitants dead, apart from the soldiers in Monte Castle and other stragglers. The sudden threat would catch the British off guard as they hastily organized a retreat, abandoning the survivors of San Sebastian to themselves. Eventually, the cannibals would make their way up Urgel Hill and to the Monte Castle. Here, the French would attempt to fend off the cannibals all throughout the night, but were eventually forced to retreat to Monte Castle. The fate of General Emmanuel Rey is unknown, but it can be presumed that he may have died in the fight against the undead hordes.
On the morning of September 2nd, the French would bring along a body and attempt to explain to the Anglo-Portuguese prisoners that the deceased body was not done by human hands. Although reluctant to help believing they'd be fighting for Napoleon, the British and Portuguese would come to agree in assisting the French in escape and would soon arm themselves, at least according to Robert Smith's account. The cohort would begin their way down from the top, encountering obstacles and hordes of the undead who apparently had holes the size of a head according to Robert, who then again might be exaggerating. Eventually, the soldiers would reach the foot of the hill and come across a rampart, which would need to be destroyed before being able to proceed. Luckily, a capstan was located nearby, which allowed them to lift up powder kegs that could be used to blow up the rampart. After destroying the rampart, the soldiers would then retrieve a hay bale so that it could be used to break their fall. All the while, zombies from a nearby door would begin to emerge, forcing some soldiers to be diverted to fend them off. In this same area, an open window can be spotted among the adjacent houses. Within this building, 2 British soldiers and the shambler can be found dead on the floor, implying a struggle for survival. One of these soldiers is inferred to be Jonathan Baker, as notes written by him can be found nearby. His first note can be found in a broken bottle behind a stack of crates near the capstan, likely in an attempt to notify the British ships of the dire situation they were in. This note also relays a first-hand retelling of the outbreak of the blight within the city.
A few rankers passed off with consumption this morning. Perhaps they were slumbering, but they woke with a bloodlust. A poor chap got a better look at the two, and they lunged at him and ripped his throat out. I couldn't tell you what happened afterwards, but more and more men became afflicted with this bloodlust. The streets are teeming with man-eating cannibals. Our officer has us held up in a house. To the naval frigates outside of San Sebastian, please, organize an extraction effort. We've taken devastating losses, and we're in no condition to confront the French, let alone are the French in any condition to contest the cannibals roaming the streets. However, I fear the best course of action is to bombard these savages until they can do no harm. To any civilian who's discovered this letter, deliver these to any of His Majesty's soldiers. Don't bother sending anyone. I've got it all figured out.
Meanwhile, Barry, an officer of the 9th Regiment, had been hiding in the French defenses on the city's outskirts waiting for a chance to escape. When he hears the sounds of explosion and bitter struggle from the city, he realizes that there are still survivors left alive. Barry patiently waits for the survivors to hopefully make it to the place where he is hiding. A Royal Navy blockade vessel can be seen in the distance, slowly making its way closer to the city whilst the soldiers fight their way through the city until it eventually stops in the city's bay. After fending off a minor horde in the city's streets, the soldiers enter a building, passing through a bar and other living quarters as they make their way to the rooftops.
Upon reaching the fortress walls, the soldiers rendezvous with stragglers who had managed to survive in the room of a building connected to the walls. They would then continue advancing through the fortress until reaching a locked gate. Arriving at the outermost area of the fort, the soldiers would encounter Barry, who had been awaiting their arrival. He explains to them that he had used a Congreve rocket to signal the nearby ship in the harbor and would lower them down with a platform to the beach below.
Hello? I think I got the attention of that ship over there. I can lower this platform and get us down there. Hold tight until I can bring this platform back up.
As Barry pulls up the lift, the soldiers will begin the bitter fight for survival as zombies begin pouring into the corridor where they were situated. This continues until the lift is completely raised and the soldiers are told to get on.
Get on the platform!
Once the soldiers get on the platform, Barry will begin lowering it. Before he could lower the lift completely, Barry would be ambushed and tackled by two runners followed by a bomber who would drop the barrel and explode them all. The explosion would fling upon the iron hatch, and as the lift no longer moved, a daring soldier would have to go up the hatch and to the winch to continue lowering the lift for everyone else. On the beach, the soldiers would hold out against the horde of zombified Britons coming from a nearby camp until eventually a rowboat sent from the Royal Navy vessel would pick them up, allowing their escape from San Sebastian. Following the horrific events at San Sebastian, it is assumed that Wellington and his allies' march into southern France was halted in order to confront this new threat.
We was locked in cells, and the braggards, French, had me in after a musket ball must have shattered me foot. The shot left me winded and in more pain than you could ever fathom. I spent who knows how many nights in here, scratching at the walls, looking to carve me way out. Morning came one day, and they dragged a body to the gate. In horrible English, they said, "This was not done by human hands." Mr. Frog here tried to get us to fight for Boney's franc. We politely declined, keeping to the king's shilling, but we couldn't give up the opportunity to point the muskets to the Frenchies' backs. Anyways, we made out of the fort, and immediately these men, blood drooling over their mouths onto their shirts, a lot of them being French with holes in them the size of their heads, they all put their eyes on, even the sick-looking French, and ran at us. We cut them down, we made out of the fort down to the city below. Every step, weave or turn, a Frenchman will be torn in half or eaten away. The problems arose when they started munching us Anglos. Of course, I made such ground, none of them touched me. I led those men out of that hole with just me muskets and haversack. The Frenchmen were practically bowing down to their knees, begging, "Monsieur, please do not let me die." By mid-morning, only I, a few others, and a couple of froggies made it to the city walls. One of them stick rockets them Congreve boys used to like was there. I used it to draw a royal ship into the bay, and it worked. Not before the blast attracted all those man-eating cannibals. The Frenchies all fell as I lowered me lads to safety on a crane lift. A jolly boat picked them up, but for me, I fought maybe 200 of them, cut them all down, and made a dive for open water over the wall, and made for the boat.
It is not known how exactly the Blight reached San Sebastian, as the Blight would mostly be located in Eastern Europe at the time, but Gilbert/Bilderman gives two possible answers. One, that a cargo shipment had unknowingly brought the Blight to Spain, or two, that the immense destruction and horrendous atrocities committed by the British and Portuguese at San Sebastian had caused the dead to rise. Though if this were to be the case, the Blight would theoretically be able to appear anywhere, which is not true. In older versions of Britannia Herald, Robert Smith states that the ship that rescues them is the HMS Undaunted, the same that saved the Danish at Vaduz. But in a recent update, the mention was removed, meaning that the ship could not actually be the HMS Undaunted. Presumably, Barry always had the Congreve rocket in his possession, but chose not to signal as he was afraid the explosion would cause the horde to be attracted. Also, Barry was originally a soldier of the 5th Regiment of Foot until a recent update deleted the aforementioned regiment and made Barry an officer of the 9th Regiment of Foot. The reasoning behind as to why the 5th was removed is unknown, but it can be assumed that it was due to the fact that the regiment did not actually participate at the siege of San Sebastian, whilst the 9th did. Despite that, the zombified British soldiers on the map still have the uniform of the 5th. The horde at the end of San Sebastian are intended to be the British soldiers for the nearby encampment. In general, the zombies in San Sebastian are all meant to have British uniforms. The badge for completing San Sebastian in one life is called Forlorn Hope, which is a term used to describe the group of soldiers tasked with the first assault of an enemy position, which were usually considered suicidal and often caused mass casualties. It also references the painting by William Barnes Wolin, depicting Lieutenant Colin Campbell leading the 9th at San Sebastian. Chris Trent Facing the Inevitable wasn't supposed to be the original finale soundtrack for San Sebastian, as Sebastian intended to use two different music pieces as mentioned by his comment in Tristan's video. In the bar where the players pass through to reach the rooftops, there's a dead civilian's corpse with the word traidor, Spanish for traitor, being written next to him. There are two possible explanations for this, the first being that because he is a zombie, he is seen as a traitor to humanity, as seen with the American colors where they refer to zombified sappers as traitors. The second explanation is that he was killed for being an afrancesado, or Frenchified, making him a traitor to Spain, but this seems unlikely as the city was mostly pro-French and made no hesitation when firing at Allied soldiers when they breached the city walls, as noted by soldiers.